What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us for another episode of Double Tech. It's your boy Dave here with my co-host Quentin, and we're joined by two very special guests today. We have Nico House as well as Chuck Modi here, and we're discussing Brian Flores, what's going on with the coaching situation down in Miami. Chuck, what are your thoughts?
First of all, thank you for having me. Second of all, Brian Flores won 8 of his last 9 games. Let's just remember that. Brian Flores has back-to-back winning seasons. Let's remember that. The last coach who was fired with back-to-back winning seasons was Jim Caldwell, who went 9-7 twice with the Detroit Lions. What I think of that is ongoing racial discrimination in the NFL, ongoing racism that is not all that dissimilar for the same reasons Colin Kaepernick is out of the NFL. And why don't we have enough black coaches? It's a bottom line business. So, what we have to do now is what Brian Flores did, and that's have a lawsuit. Because all the appeals to morality, moral suasion have not worked in changing a cadre of 32 billionaire, highly racist Trumpian owners from doing the right thing and hiring the most qualified kind of candidates.
What about yourself, Nico? What you think?
No, I'm in the same category. I think it's litigation was basically the only option left. I think I applaud Brian Flores for being brave enough to actually bring this into class action, because like the difference between him bringing it litigation just on behalf of himself versus a class action is that you are now trusting that other coaches will speak up and become part of that class in order for that lawsuit to get pushed through. And if it's also important to remember that if the moment that this happened with Bill Belichick's text message that kind of blew the whole thing open, Brian Flores, like there's a lawsuit announced the next day with corroborating evidence, which means that Brian Flores, much like how he is when it comes to actual coaching in the NFL, he was very methodical and very meticulous and was building up a solid case and building up all those connections with other black coaches that have been screwed over. And this is something that I think that, we talked about on the show. I'm like, I really hope there's a black coach out there who's actually paying attention to what we see happening to Bieniemy, obviously Flores himself. Every black coach that we've seen either get scapegoated or denied opportunity, illegitimately so, while we see people like Josh McCown getting more opportunity than he should have ever gotten in the NFL to begin with, let alone as a coach. So,
and you're right? I think it is a big piece, and I want to get Dave's opinion on this, but there's a big piece we got to pay attention to when we talk about systematic, right? That's a word we use a lot when we talk about racism. And there was a piece in there that said that after he refused to take the money and take out the season, that they went to other teams and other GMs and other owners to let him know he doesn't cooperate. He doesn't do this, that, and the third. And obviously we're leaning towards that systematic direction. And I just want to know, Dave, do you think that works in the systematic racism side, or do you think it's just against the coach that didn't listen?
No, it's systemic racism. It can't be pointed to a coach that didn't listen, because the end directive is to win football games. You can be upset about the fact that, he had to deal with having Tua when he wanted Justin Herbert, and yet he still found a way to win the last 8 games of the season, which he, like Chuck said previously, hasn't been done since Jim Caldwell. Jim Caldwell took the Lions, which is the lowliest franchise in the NFL, to multiple winning seasons and didn't give more opportunity. Wasn't given more opportunity.
David is the resident expert on how lowly the Lions is, by the way, everybody. He will tell you. He watched every single game until he missed one for my birthday because he already knew it was a foregone conclusion on an L.
And that was on a Saturday.
Right.
Saturday football. So no, you've got 2 9-7 seasons in a row. And when he was with Baltimore, Jim Caldwell led Joe Flacco to a perfect postseason where he was throwing 16 touchdown passes, 0 picks. That's the type of quarterback guru that you want around your team. You got Brian Flores, who has learned from the best in Belichick, and all of his previous coaches that go on to get jobs, they fail. They're not able to put 18 in a row. And he went and beat Belichick in the final game of the season as well, when they're headed to the playoffs, to put an extra stamp on it. So now you have the one coach who can defeat Belichick twice in a season, and he's not good enough, and your division rivals, there's no way you can blame it on the person.
And I just want to point out, just, in case you guys don't know, we have Chuck here who does a lot of work, and he's done a lot of work into looking into this situation, making sure he's educated and understanding the lawsuit. So I want to kind of push you with that same question and kind of ask you, what angles have you looked at with it, whether it be systematic or otherwise?
Well, it's systematic and otherwise. So when you look at the lawsuit, I'm going to pause. My heart goes out to any Lions fan that is on this panel. Okay? That's just abusive right there. And it's child abuse if you have children. Yeah, it's masochism. So let's start right there. But so a Lions fan knows more than anyone how great Jim Caldwell was. And there were three general parts of the 68-page lawsuit. The first part was talking about NFL racism in general, historical, from history to Colin Kaepernick and other areas. The second part was talking about the black coaches in general, systemic racism, quantifiable systemic racism in general against black coaches. We only have two now. And then the third part was specific names. Jim Caldwell highlighted. Eric Bieniemy, 4 straight trips to the AFC conference final, highlighted. But also people like David Culley and Steve Wilkes, who get 1 year to try to work a miracle. Let's bring the black man to do a garbage man cleanup job. And if you don't pull off the miracle, you're gone. Because take David Culley. Someone say, well, he only had 4 wins. Well, if you look at every single preseason projection, you see things like 1-16, 2-15, 3-14, tops. He exceeded the preseason projections of his roster. Jim Caldwell did the same thing. If you go to Pro Football Focus, they picked those 9-7 Lions to win 4 games in 6 games. He bested them by 8 wins over 2 years. So if you give a black man a crappy roster and he exceeds the roster prediction by 3 wins, then give that man a playoff roster and watch him win a Super Bowl. It's real simple. It is not hard.
It's simple as that. I mean, I think me and Dave have talked about this once before, and we pointed out the former coach of the Bengals was a Hugh Jackson, right? And they kind of did him the same way. And you're looking at coaches come out right now, and they're trying to speak out on it. But, obviously we got issues where you're going to have proof in different things. And Nico, I wanted to see, do you think these other coaches coming out and really stepping forward and saying, you know what, I got your back, I got a story to tell, do you think it's going to help, or do you think it might be too late for their word?
No, I think it actually will help out tremendously, especially if we're talking about in a court of law, because now basically they're if everybody can't be lying whenever it's one thing if it's qualitative, but once again, we're talking about quantitative, fact-based. Somebody gave Jason Garrett a job and Ty Bowles was still a coordinator on the Bucks. I don't want to hear about qualitative. It is no longer anecdotal. It is like Jason Garrett got a job. He shouldn't even have a job, let alone getting it over the coaches that were available.
Oh, my Giants. I don't know what they was thinking.
Yeah, it's like, and when you go back to this, so because it's not just from the perspective of the coaches, obviously people hire people oftentimes, unfortunately, who look like them, who they can relate to, who they know. And when you have a league that's over 70% black, and then the ownership is basically either white. If they're not white, they still actually fall into the category of what would be considered a Caucasian, because even though you have the Pakistani American who owns the Jags, he doesn't have any relationship with black people that would make him eager to hire a black coach. And there's already tenuous kind of a tumultuous relationship with that situation anyway. But when you have a situation where not only are all the billionaire owners white, but even if you wanted to be an owner and you're black, they have to approve of it.
Yes,
what are the odds you think that's going to happen? So now you're going to
fall into that system.
Legislated mandates. You must allow X amount of black people. If they apply, I don't give a damn if you think they suck. Now you've taken it out of your hands and put it in the law's hands, because we're looking at choose discrimination right now, and it's undeniable at this point.
So, I want to stick a point here with this, because we all know the NFL's dropped the ball with issues like this before plenty of times. It's sad that it's come to a lawsuit, but I really want to go around the horn, and I'm going to start with Dave. What do you see happening? I want your your expected happening and reality of what's going to happen. That's what I want to hear. Dave, from you first.
The best expectation here is that there's equality not only in the hiring process, but also in opportunity. I think what the highlighting of this through the class action lawsuit is going to get other coaches to speak up. That is the hope, all the way down to position coaches, trainers, down the line. Then, will that result in more fair positions? I don't know, but I think it could result in a convention of some sort, maybe an owners meet with the coaches and potential coach hirings at a time separate from players in the offseason, so that you can kind of foster those relationships and have that relationship growth between the owners and guys they're hiring. But I don't think that there's going to be any ramifications towards Stephen Ross or towards the Dolphins for this behavior and what went down with Flores. Unfortunately, I think it's going to be structurally the NFL will adapt to this negative highlight of the league, but not the Dolphins specifically.
All right, Nico, what do you think? Expectation, what you want versus reality? What you know?
What do I
think?
want? I would like to see. Well, what I would like is that owners just bite the bullet and be like, "Yeah, we were messing up," because at the end of the day, you can not be racist and still suffer from implicit racial bias, right? Just because of how circumstances work out. I would like for them to own up to it. And I would like to see that because of the solidarity all these coaches have shown with each other. You can't blackball all of them now. Like, there's a lot of them that have spoken up. So you can't blackball all of them. And so I think that protects Brian Flores in a lot of ways from being blackballed personally. Because now if you blackball him, given his resume, and he takes you back to litigation by himself, you're screwed again, and he's probably going to be given a job, much like what's the lineman that got in the cat? He was
Incognito, Richie Incognito situation.
No. The lineman was protesting alongside Kaepernick and was blackballed in the middle of his prime.
Eric Reed.
Eric Reed. Yeah.
Eric Reed.
Yeah, he was blackballed too.
Exactly, and that settlement led to him being back in the league anyway, even though they were trying to blackball him. And so, and Brian Flores will make it a lot louder than Eric Reed made it. I promise you, clearly. So that's what I would like to see. But the reality situation is, I don't know what we're going to get, because it ain't like the court system is all that trustworthy when it comes to upholding the rights of Black people and equality anyway. So there's that. Like, that's a reality we got to deal with. And we know how billionaires do have the ability to influence the outcomes in court, which is one of the reasons that Tom Brady just let the Deflategate stuff die, because he couldn't afford to go toe to toe with these billionaires in the court system. But at the end of the day,
came out of his mouth too.
Yeah, and Brian Flores is smart, and he knows all I need is discovery. Regardless of what the courts say, I just need discovery, and it gets ugly anyway in a lot. Because fine, if you want to beat me in federal courts, I can take it to the state. You can take it to it's a lot of different ways to deal with it. But I think it's important to remember that these coaches, whether it be like with the Kaepernick situation or the coaching situation, like, there is a problem that permeates not just in the NFL, but really through all sports. And it's getting to the point where, because everybody always says, right, you don't want affirmative action. That's what people say. Oh, that's not equal, right? You're giving Black people the advantage. Well, you know what I always say? Wouldn't it be really nice to not need affirmative action? Maybe that would be nicer, right? The problem is that when you have a problem that becomes too great, then you have a natural overcorrection, especially in the States. That's what always ends up happening. So if the problem didn't exist, the overcorrection wouldn't have happened. But you don't want to acknowledge the problem exists, which is how you keep having these overcorrections. He should have never even had to litigate. And I don't want to. And I see people in my comment section. What about his resume? What about he just didn't win because of X, Y, and Z, and that's why he's just trying to blame them because he didn't get hired. Oh, that's funny. Do you even know the resumes of these coaches that you're defending? No, you just know that it's a time for you to pretend like the Black guy didn't deserve his opportunity.
So as we close this out, I saved you for last, Chuck, for good reason. I want to have our specialists take us home and, let us know how you really feel, and like I said, what you would love, what you expect, but how do you think it's really going to go based on the NFL and their past?
Well, the positive spin is the last time there was an uptick in Black coaches was 2002 when Johnny Cochran and others threatened a lawsuit. So we know that's the best way. But if you're asking me personally, I don't have much hopes that there'll ever be more than 3 Black coaches at one time. I believe the NFLers are making business decisions now. The same way they made a business decision not to hire Kaepernick. We know Kaepernick is better than Jeff Driscoll, who started for 3 teams, or Mike Glennon, who started for 3 teams, and about 30, 40 other quarterbacks.
Cutler,
they made a business. Go ahead.
You could go down the days. You couldn't tell me 32 starters better than that man when he was in his prime.
Hey, no. And I want to interrupt, but I feel like this got to be said. He was so good at what he did that they literally went and got a bunch of prototype Kaepernicks, and they run the league now. Ironically,
that's exactly right. That point is big. That point is big. I'm going to segue on that. So Kaepernick establishes that owners would rather lose games than not do the right thing. We understand that for racial reasons. And what I'm suggesting, on Nico's point that there are more black quarterbacks than ever before, half of the top 10 are black quarterbacks. They are making a business decision to keep the white leader in place. And the white leader is a commodity. And the final frontier of the white leader is the coach. Coach. You can't tell Patrick Mahomes to get off the field, but you can't tell Jim Caldwell and Eric Bieniemy to get off the field and hire an incompetent white coach. The psychic value of white leadership has great meaning in white America, particularly white Trumpian America, and hope. And when you hire someone, the great white hope, in the NFL, they call the great white hope the next McVay. That's what they call the great white hope. They have language for it, right? Like if I shared a bathroom stall with Sean McVay, that is worth more than an incredible resume like Jim Caldwell, who was a QB coach of Peyton Manning and helped him in his formative years, who turned Flacco around, as it's been said, and won a Super Bowl with him, who turned Matthew Stafford around, who's in the Super Bowl now, but they weren't talking about him the same way when Jim Caldwell got him. So we got to look at the facts. I believe you're never going to see a glorious day because it is a business decision by people who do not want to win games.
And don't care about their businesses either, obviously, because
and it's weird, right? And it's the saddest thing ever. You think about all this pressure, all this proof. There's probably going to be something that's found to be right as far as, his case and how everything's going to be held. All of this is going to come out. And just because there's so much power in the hands of 33 people, that's the owners and add Roger Goodell, that nothing will probably happen. And it's just going to blow by because they can afford for it to.
Right? Well, let's not say nothing will happen. They'll probably put something on the helmet.
They're going to do something mediocre. They're going to give you some minuscule thing. They're going to say,
like Kendrick Lamar perform at the Super Bowl.
Yeah, like the Texans hire, right? It's like the Texans hire here recently. They're setting that man up. That's what they're going to do. They're going to do little things so they can say, see, all you got to do is enough to give a judge and a couple people to make them happy to keep the ratings up. And it's disgusting. It's disgusting.
If you don't
mind, right now,
I got a question for Chuck, because I'm glad you brought the Texans out. You can answer or not answer. I completely understand if you don't. But now that we have the glorious benefit of retrospect, how do you feel this Deshaun Watson thing went down? Because when there was allegations that were put out, which, by the way, I immediately thought this is really weird. Since when did the NFL
awkward timing, huh?
I just remember Ben Roethlisberger. I don't know if everybody else does, but y'all swept that under the rug, right? But it was assumed that Deshaun Watson was guilty. Then the text messages come out. Oh, actually, she was apologizing to him for inappropriately touching him. So we lost a year of Deshaun Watson over this. How do you think that race plays into this particular situation?
Well, there was another sportscast, and I'm forgetting who. It says, a lot of teams, players have a lot of allegations against them. And what teams often do is they squash most of them. Most we never hear about. There's a machine called the NFL that squashes it. And it's not so much to say the allegations against Deshaun Watson are false, so much as to say Houston says you're on your own, Deshaun. Whereas they may have tried to squash it as has happened many times before. If you look at the early days of Ben Roethlisberger, the report was out, the allegation was out there. And even ESPN for 2.5 days refused to report it till all these blogs were like, yo, ESPN, you're going to report it? And Roethlisberger's case was hidden for quite some time.
Yep. So you didn't deny anything.
You do see, you do see that. There were 2 cases against Ben Roethlisberger, and one of them incredibly credible. But when you're on Texans, I just want to close with a name that you said earlier, because I think it's a watershed moment. It's Josh McCown. And Josh McCown's a scary situation. He could be a great coach one day if he pays his dues like anyone else. Everybody likes him, and he's a great mentor and all that stuff. But when you're about to hire a white coach who's never coached a single day of NFL football or a single day as a coach, as a head coach in college either, and he only coached his son in high school, once he breaks ground, then I can hire any single white person I want if I just say they interviewed well.
True.
We're not even hiring the best white coaches. He made it to the final round. He made it to the final round, and some have argued that the lawsuit of Brian Flores actually stopped them from hiring him.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah,
100%. And I mean, That's it. I mean, that's it. I mean, it's on the nail. I don't think it's even maybe they did it, but that's all we have for this episode of Double Tech. We appreciate you guys watching. Like, subscribe, watch it again. That's it.